All right, and just a couple of things from our point of view, little COVID update. But last week, somebody asked the question, what is your 2021 merit increase budget? And so I said, rather than just having everybody chat in their answers, we would do a poll this week. So let's see what everybody is doing. You see the choices here, you haven't decided, you're not doing one, or then these various options. So give us your answer, and then your colleagues on the webinar will be able to know. We can also send these results around this afternoon with the email. All right, so you see the responses there. 38% say they haven't decided yet or they don't know. 8% are not doing an increase at all. 3% are doing somewhere between 1% and 2%. 27% are at the next level, 2% and 3%, and then 24% are doing 3% or more. And I know we had some responses last week, but some folks didn't do an increase last year, and they're trying to make up for that a little bit this year. But so interesting responses. You can see now what your colleagues are doing, other members. Okay, so just a couple of things I wanted to touch on. Chris gave us a great update as to what's going on in the immigration space with the Biden-Harris administration, a couple of other things that are going on that employers should be aware about. We've got a national paid leave bill in Congress. So nothing's been done on it. As Chris said before, this is not law yet, and it may change significantly before it's passed. But my guess is the Democrats, who now have the majority in Congress, are going to try to push this through. This would be 12 weeks of partial income for all workers, basically paid FMLA, their own health condition, pregnancy, birth, or adoption, or to care for someone with a serious health condition. So stay tuned on that. We'll keep you updated. For right now, the $15 minimum wage hike, which is what we're expecting to happen, or some significant federal minimum wage hike to happen, is on hold. But we have seen executive orders affirming LGBTQ rights. You remember last June, the United States Supreme Court decided that sexual orientation and transgender status are protected categories under Title VII. So if you have not updated your policies around discrimination and harassment to include those protected categories, good time to take a look at those. There are a few other policies that impact LGBTQ rights, for example, dress code policies. If you are very gendered in your dress code policy, women have to wear this, men have to wear that, good time to take a look at that as well. But that's sort of the update. And then our COVID update. So CDC recently put out, like in the last week or so, some new guidelines around workplace testing programs in non-healthcare workplaces. So if you are requiring testing of your employees, there is a whole guidance on this. I just included some of it, but this is something to be thinking about. And a lot of this is common sense. A lot of this shouldn't surprise anyone based on everything that we've seen about COVID, but these are the kinds of things you should be thinking about. Employee privacy and confidentiality. That's been paramount throughout the pandemic. We want to keep all this stuff private and confidential. Making sure employees have information about the potential impact of the testing program, like what's going to happen if they have a positive test, what's going to happen if they decline a test, or they're not going to be able to come to work for a period of time. Explaining the testing program, right? Anything anybody might consider important or significant, how the test is done, how long the test takes, how long it takes for results to come back, et cetera. Make sure that any information that you're providing is in simple terms, non-technical terms, and also, as with any communication that you have with your employees, if you have a number of employees for whom English is not their first language, you need to be communicating with them in their native language. So think about that. I was just talking to someone the other day who had a large group of foreign workers. Very clear that you have to do any kind of training or any kind of information in their foreign, in the language that is most familiar to them, to make sure that they understand. Train folks, train your supervisors, talk to coworkers as well to avoid putting pressure on employees to participate in the testing. And also encourage and answer questions during the consent process. That's an active information sharing between the employer and the employee. The employer discloses the information, answers the questions, and promotes the employee's free choice. So like I said, there's much more information in the guidance itself, and we can release that to you in the email that goes around this afternoon. All right, and I feel compelled to touch on vaccination once again because it is the topic on everyone's minds, right? I'm continuing to get questions from members about requiring the vaccine. Of course, remember, we have limited availability right now. Very hard to require a vaccine when it's hard to get. If you're on social media at all, you know that's what many of the posts are about. How do I get a vaccine? How do I go about doing this? So the employer can establish legitimate health and safety requirements that are job related and consistent with business necessity, which means if you deal with the public, if you are open for business in that sense, it's going to make a lot more sense for you to mandate the vaccine than for folks who are teleworking, for example, right? Generally speaking, we've only seen flu shots mandated in the healthcare setting, nowhere else. And even then, they've been challenged on a legal basis. And always keep in mind, if you are going to implement a mandatory vaccine policy, you have to allow for reasonable accommodation on the basis of disability and or religion. All right, you guys have heard me talk about the carrot and stick approach. The very, very first question you have to ask and you have to be able to answer is, if you are going to require their vaccine and your employees refuse, what then? If you can't answer that question, you should not have a mandatory vaccine policy. Or if you don't like the answer to that question, which is, we're going to lose a portion of our workforce, you should not have a mandatory vaccine policy. You also need to think about, if we're going to mandate this, how long are we going to allow people to comply? Limited supply. Are we going to allow 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 months? What are we going to do? And we really need to think about those populations with limited safety data. I've seen pushback with some of our members from pregnant employees or nursing employees saying it hasn't been widely tested on those populations and we don't feel comfortable right now, but we might feel comfortable sometime down the road. What are you going to do about that? Keep in mind the legal challenges. You really don't want to be fighting this battle. I don't think you don't want to spend the time, energy, and money being challenged. Also, what I'm reading, and I'm not a workers' comp expert, but what I'm reading is, if you mandate the vaccine and there's an adverse reaction, that could be a workers' comp event. So something to think about as well. Talk to your carrier before putting in any mandatory vaccine policy. And you guys heard me say it before, the carrot approach. I like the carrot approach. Educate your employees. Make vaccines as easy as possible. They probably will be free. Give your employees time off, paid time off to go get the vaccine, paid time off if they have an adverse reaction. Make it as easy as possible. Help your employees access the vaccine for those who are eligible. Vaccination bonuses, it's being done out there. I know members are doing it. I know more broadly, I've read about at least one healthcare system offering $500 for each individual who gets a shot. One member contacted me and said they're doing $100 for each individual who gets a shot. Interestingly enough, EEOC has not weighed in on whether or not that violates any discrimination laws. They're being pressured by employer groups to do so. I do have a slight concern, I guess, especially if you have employees who can't get the vaccine for some disability reason or for some religious reason. So stay tuned on that. But keep in mind, if you're an employer and you have 20 employees who need to get vaccinated and you're giving out $100 bonuses, first of all, you could give the bonuses even to people who are not physically able to get the vaccine, but also you're probably not a target for a lawsuit because of the small amount of money involved. It's, if Amazon started giving out $100 bonuses and they have thousands and thousands of employees, they're going to get the class action on their hands. You're much less likely to. And other benefits for the vaccinated, I mentioned this last week, at least one large law firm, everybody's working from home right now. They've said, we're not letting you back in the building unless or until you're vaccinated. So something to think about as well. Should you have a policy? Yes. Whether it's mandatory or voluntary with encouragement, I highly recommend a policy. For members, we can absolutely help you with that. But I think it's a good thing to have a policy to lay it all out for your employees, why you think it's important, and all the things you're going to do to help them get the vaccine. And then finally, you can ask employees for proof that they've been vaccinated. EEOC has said it's allowed under the Americans with Disabilities Act. But if you're going to ask that question, that's the only question you're going to ask. Ask your employees for proof of vaccination. Make sure you tell them you don't want any additional medical information, because as you can imagine, you ask an employee, have you been vaccinated? They say no, you say why, and now you've elicited all sorts of medical information that you're not allowed to ask for under the Americans with Disabilities Act. So you absolutely can ask for proof of vaccination, and that may be part of your plan and may help employees, encourage employees to get vaccinated. All right, any questions coming through?
I think we are good, Amy.
Okay, great.
Yep. All right, well, thank you, everyone. Amy, thank you for that great summary, and we will, and to Chris as well, and look forward to seeing everybody next Tuesday. Have a great day.
Great.